All right, let's get a couple of Cowboys from that team and have them up here. So we're going to spend the next hour with these two Cowboy greats. First of all, please welcome to the stage a 5-time Pro Bowler, College Football Hall of Famer. He was known as Troy's security blanket, one of the great tight ends in Cowboys history, Jay Novacek.
Sorry. Well, good, Jay. How are you? There it goes. We're going.
Hi, Jay.
That's Dan.
How are you, buddy?
You may not recognize him.
Good to see you, man.
And also joining us tonight is a guy that, of course, everybody knows. You knew him very well from his playing days. He's been a member of the ticket team for about the last 15 years. He's joined us throughout each football season talking about the Cowboys and the NFL. And, of course, he's a member of the Fox A team, so he's in your living room every Sunday. The Dallas Cowboys Pro Football Hall of Famer, Ring of Honor member, one of the greatest Cowboys ever, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, Troy Aikman.
Troy, how you doing, man? Welcome. How are you?
Good to see you.
Troy? Goddamn. Thank you, man.
What's up, brother? Hi, buddy. Sir?
That's Dan.
Corby. How are you?
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Here.
So, yeah, it was quite a time.
Yeah.
Quite a time for the ticket 25 years ago. The Cowboys, the day before we went on the air, had just won the NFC Championship game, heading now to Atlanta to play the Bills for a second straight year in the Super Bowl. So the ticket's going out to Atlanta, and we think we're going to knock it out of the park with great radio from the Super Bowl that week. And
assuming we could get on the air.
Yeah, assuming we could do that. And it was quite chaotic. As you guys were going out there for a second straight meeting with the Bills, and your coach had just guaranteed a victory, were you guys thinking, yeah, we'll take care of these guys again? What was the mindset playing them again?
Well, for me, I was knocked out of the game before. I spent the night following our championship game in the hospital, and that was the year they didn't have the bye week. So my week started off a little bit rough that I got discharged from the hospital about 7 a.m. on Monday morning. Our flight was at 8 a.m. to go to Atlanta. I had just enough time to kind of throw some things in a suitcase and head off that way. And we got through the week. And I will say that the week ended, we won the Super Bowl. I'm back in Dallas. A guy came up to me who I knew from the organization, and he said, hey, he says, were you feeling okay the week of the Super Bowl? And I said, yeah, I felt fine. He says, do you remember when the buses pulled up and you got off the bus and you came? We were staying across the street from a mall. And he says, do you remember when you came running up to me and said, hey, I haven't been to a mall in years. How about we go over there and go to the mall? And I said, you're pulling my leg. And he said, no, that's what you did. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe I wasn't, quite all together there during that week as it was. But my concern going into that game once again with the Bills was that they had already been in 3 Super Bowls. Of course, we had beaten them the year before in their third. And I'm just thinking they can't possibly lose 4 in a row, and how are we going to keep this from happening? And that was really my biggest fear going into that game, just thinking just the odds of them losing 4 in a row, aren't very good.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think, Jay? Did you think you had those dudes, or you think it was going to be tough?
I thought really honestly that we matched up very well against them. They had to do more to stop us than we had to do to stop them. And so I felt I had a lot of confidence in that, and not only that, but the way we could have done so many different things. The year before when we were out in Pasadena, it was so much of a combination of what we did well: throwing the ball, running the ball, kicking game, that whole deal, and then we have to turn around and they weren't going to let us throw the ball deep down on them, and so Emmett got opportunity to carry the ball quite a bit. Which meant, which was
kind of like it was kind of like every other week.
Especially today's
same plan. Yeah, not a lot changed.
Did you make it to the mall?
What'd you buy?
Who asked that?
Corby? That's Corby, of course.
No, I did not make. To my knowledge, did not make the ball. I never followed up with the guy and said, "Well, did we go?" You know, so
that would have been a really funny visual of Troy prancing around the mall in Forever 21.
Ran up $300 at Claire's or Justice.
But I will say that it didn't quite. I thought he was pulling my leg because it's a guy that I was friendly with, but I would never have asked him to, hey, let's go have a sandwich. You know what I mean? and so when he said, hey, let's go to the mall, but it kind of sounded familiar because I hadn't been to the mall in a long time. And I try to pick my spots when I do go to the mall. So I said, hey, it must have happened. I don't know. But that was, that's my week in Atlanta.
So if you played today, and this is
It's a clown.
It's the clown. Yeah.
You lost a bet. I hope.
I did. Yeah.
I hope.
He's always like this.
Now George thought he'd look ridiculous today, but look at his
George is
outfit.
wearing Angus Young.
I think George looks perfect.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
George ought to go with that every day.
You know what? The strange thing about that is, I noticed you, but I didn't even notice what George had on. It just fit right in.
Yeah, there's George, that dork. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah.
That's his LeBron suit.
That's a good look.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I lost a bet too.
When's the Mohawk coming about?
Well, if Jason Garrett is his team's coach next year, then
So you're still holding out on So you have until
heard
what?
that-
Opening day?
Mike Florio keeps saying that Sean Payton's coming. You know anything about that? About the Sean Payton rumor?
I don't know anything about it, and I'd be shocked if
It sounds crazy, doesn't it?
I'd say I'll get a Mohawk if Jason's not the head coach.
Whoa!
Might want to walk that back. Okay.
Should have checked with my wife first.
Well, I'd like to see the first game of the year when that happens, when Joe calls Troy in and he slides in with a mohawk. Hey, everybody. Bring in the Hall of Famer Troy Aikman, who you'll notice is wearing a mohawk.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
How can we get this done?
What happened? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
This was an early season Cowboys won't make the playoffs bet. So I bet you didn't think the Cowboys would make the playoffs this year either.
Well, not at 3-5. You saw my comments.
Yeah, for sure. My question to you was, how many games, like if you played today, and maybe for you too, Jay, but how many games would you have been held out of if you played in this concussion protocol era?
Oh gosh. It's a great question. If the concussions were reported, and now I think they're better. When it first started, I think players then just didn't say, and I think probably doctors didn't say, the concussion word was not used. And so I think guys were still getting around it, circumventing it. I do think that the league's gotten better with the third party, the neutral doctor who's evaluating these guys. You got someone in the booth, but I don't know, to be quite honest with you. But I will say that what a lot of these guys experience, I never experienced. They talk about sensitivity to light, nauseousness. I had some headaches following, but generally the day after a game, I felt pretty normal, so.
Except for this whole bus incident, or the mall incident.
But they didn't do the baseline testing until my last year. My last year is when they did my baseline test, which obviously was no benefit to me. And now when they test these guys, they go back and compare it to their baseline test, and that's how they determine whether or not they're capable of going back and playing. I said it at the time that when I retired, everyone was talking about me and Steve Young as far as concussions go. And I said, I got to be honest. I mean, if I think I had 7 or 8. 2 were significant. The one that we just talked about, another one. The other ones, as far as head injuries go, were pretty minor. But I always maintain that you cannot tell me that when you look at the history of this game, that me and Steve Young have had significantly more concussions than all these other players that have played. It's ridiculous to even think. I mean, I'm getting hit just a few times a game. Daryl Johnson's using his helmet on every single play.
Yeah.
Offensive linemen, and they found that really to be true. So even though I think people still point to me with the head injuries, and I will say I don't suffer as best I can tell from anything with regards to those injuries. But guys, I know a lot of guys who are having some real problems, and they're guys that had the repetitive hits, mostly offensive linemen, the fullbacks, and those type positions.
How'd you come out of this game, Jay?
Perfect. The only time I ever went to the wrong huddle was in the stupid Pro Bowl.
You really did that?
Yeah.
Uniform confusion, or was that?
No, that didn't have anything to. It didn't help.
Yeah.
Because everyone had different helmets on, but same uniform type thing. But yeah, Steve Atwater hit me.
Oh, so you were
Yeah,
a little dizzy.
I was. Here's the deal: all defensive players cheat. They're not supposed to blitz in the Pro Bowl, right? So they do this blitz, little simple out route, and I'm thinking, pretty much all defensive players aren't real smart anyway, and the linebacker's not there. He's supposed to cover. He's not even close to me. I mean, I have no idea where he is. So I just turn around with a big smile on my face, catch the ball, and turn around. And they blitzed, and Atwater's coming at me and hits me right here. And I think the good thing about it, he was a gentleman. He did help me to the right huddle.
That's nice of him.
Yeah, very nice.
We're going back to this week 25 years ago. We were on the air, and we heard these comments from Jimmy Johnson that he was asked about and then answered these really long, detailed answers about how he could turn Jacksonville around. And then 3 months later, he and Jerry split. Yeah. Did you guys have any indication that week or during that season that there was a major problem between your owner and your head coach?
I think that I certainly did, and I think that as a quarterback, you get privy to a little bit more information than maybe some of the other players. And I don't know what Jay knew. I think so. There were some other guys that sensed there was some tension between the two of them. It started really in '92. I remember we had lost to Washington, and that obviously has been well documented. Jimmy on the plane going back, and then we went and we played at Atlanta on a Monday night game. So this is the year before you're talking about, and we destroyed Atlanta to win the division. First time we'd won the division. And we came in, and Jimmy was such a father figure to so many of us, and we all took our cues from him. And we were waiting. We just knew that, okay, this is the moment. We just made Jimmy proud. We made our father proud. He's going to tell us how proud he is of us. And we went in, and he didn't say much of anything. It was just like another win. And I remember thinking, man, that was a real disappointment. It was a disappointment for me. I think it was for most everyone on the team. And then we traveled back to Dallas. The last game of the season was against the Chicago Bears. It was Mike Singletary's last game that he played as a Bear and then in the NFL. And we beat the Bears. So now we come in and we said, all right, we just set a record for Cowboys most wins in a season, 13. Now this is going to be the moment. Jimmy jumps up on this box, and he's getting ready to give this big speech, and he starts in. Well, one thing Jimmy hated was when he started to give his talk, and if he wanted everyone in the locker room immediately after the game. And if the door opened when he was starting his talk, he would go ballistic. He'd lose his mind.
Yeah.
So he's giving this. He's about to say, "Hey guys, that was a great performance." And the door opens, and he stops and turns, and it's Jerry walking in with Prince Bandar. And I'll never forget it. Prince Bandar, for crying out loud. And Jimmy stopped. You can just see everything just came out of his face. He just stopped and said, "We'll see you on Monday." And he got down. We're like, "Oh my gosh!" And that was kind of so you kind of knew that there was some tension going on. And then throughout the '93 season, Jimmy had softened a little bit compared to where he had been, and our relationship really improved. Mine and his relationship improved greatly during that '93 season. So I was hearing some things, but so the season ends. We win the Super Bowl. And I went off. I took some buddies to the Bahamas. Jimmy set me up at the Crystal Palace there in the Bahamas, his big spot where he'd go gambling. And I won some money. And back then, you didn't have email and all that, so I needed my workout. So I called the Cowboys facility, and I called the strength coach, Mike Woyzik. I leave a voicemail, and I said, "Hey, when you get in the morning, can you fax me the workout? I said, I need to get it in while I'm down here in the Bahamas. I forgot to bring one with me. And I said, by the way, if you run into Jimmy, tell him I'm killing him here in the Bahamas. So I get up the next morning. I'm going on a fishing trip. The GM of the casino says, hey, when you get back, Jimmy's going to meet you in the casino. I said, Jimmy who? He says, Jimmy Johnson. I said, Jimmy Johnson's coming here? And he says, yeah, he said he heard you were killing it. He's going to meet you. He wants to meet you in the high rollers section. All right. So I got back from the fishing trip, and they said Jimmy's over there. He and Rhonda, his now wife, his girlfriend at the time. I walk in, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, hey, I said, I got a message. He said, I thought, what the hell? He says, I'll come out because he says, I got to go on to the owners' meetings from here. So I gambled with him that night. He crushed it. I mean, his gambling's well documented.
Yeah.
He crushed it that night. He made a lot of money. And he was in a great mood. He's talking about moves. We just lost John Giesick. He says, we're okay. We're going to pick up this guy. We'll be fine. So that was the last time I saw Jimmy as our head coach.
Right before the non-toast.
2 days later,
Yeah.
2 days later is when the toast or, that wasn't well received took place, and then he was out. So it was pretty bizarre that Super Bowl, who would have thought? I mean, I tried talking Jimmy into staying for one more year, give it one more shot. I knew he was not in for the long haul, but I just thought that maybe one more year and we could make another run at it. And I think that Jimmy had every intention of staying one more year, but I think when Jerry made those comments, hey, any one of 500 coaches could have won the Super Bowl, I think Jimmy's a smart guy, and he saw it as the crack in the door that gave him an out, and being able to keep the money he made and be able to make a little more money along with it and get out. And he was smart in how he handled it. And so that's why I've never totally faulted Jerry. Jimmy was ready too. It was just the time that had to happen, and it's unfortunate.
Prior to all this, was this something that was a big talking point in the room amongst you guys?
No, not really. I'll be honest that I had a relationship with Jerry. I had more of a relationship after Jimmy left. I mean, I would see Jerry in the hall, and I'd stop and visit with him, or he'd ask for me to come talk to him, but very little. And by and large, players just didn't have much of a relation. Jerry wasn't with the team. I mean, Jerry was not allowed, and you're going to find this really crazy, but Jerry was not allowed on the practice field when we were practicing. So Jimmy would be out there, and whatever the agreements were that they had when Jimmy took over, but when they were getting along in the early days, Jerry would walk out, he'd stand on the sidelines, and Jimmy would go over right away, and they'd converse about whatever it was that Jerry wanted to talk to him about. When the tension started, 92, all of 93, Jerry would come out, stand on the sidelines, and wait, and Jimmy would freeze him out. Jimmy would wait 30 minutes before he'd go over and talk to him, and I remember the first practice, the first OTA that we had when Barry Switzer was the head coach. I walked out onto the practice field. I don't know if you remember this, Jay. Walked out onto the practice field, and Jerry was not only on the practice field, which we had never seen before, but he was in coaching gear. And I said, it's different. It's different from here on out. And it was.
Did you guys mind? Did it bother you that Jerry was out there at all?
For me, it didn't bother a bit. We had and Jimmy did this, and we had such a great work ethic that it really didn't matter who was going to be out there. And our practices, I felt, just kept right on going. We still had all the assistant coaches that we had before, and an example of how our practices went, when we would get another backup quarterback to come in, we would do things so quick and so fast when we were just doing simple individual routes and everything, that when that quarterback, when it was his turn, he was like 3 seconds behind everything. We were already running and going, and they had to come in and adjust to what we were doing. And, that was one of the things that I think made us such a great team is that we knew what we were going to do, and we're going to keep doing it well.
All right, this is a good place to take a break. We got a ticket ticker coming up. We've got much more with Troy and Jay. Coming up next, they'll tell us if Jerry Jr. is really rowdy.
It is 6:57 here from Texas Motor Speedway Ticketstock. And Ticketstock 25. Thank you very much. And we have our roundtables going on with our Cowboy legends, Jay Novacek and Troy Aikman.
Yeah.
And we carry on with a conversation with all the ticket guys up here presently. And I get a kick out of the Cowboys' history from that time because I wasn't here. So I get most of it secondhand. And everyone, of course, was watching you guys during the dynasty time. And then, unfortunately, Jay, the back got the better of you. It looked like, I guess your last game was Super Bowl 30.
It was, yes.
And you tried to come back, but the back wasn't cooperating, right?
Yeah.
He was like Elway in those. He went out on top,
That's a great call.
Yeah.
That's a great decision.
With you, Mr. Aikman, though, there's two different departments of your career. There's the one where there was nothing but great times, and then there's the one the one where the book exists. And I'm quite confident you'll never write the book, but it felt like, even from your football life, that right around the time Jay left was a completely different half of a book that was probably way more frustrating than anything you could have imagined.
Correct.
Period.
You get so mad.
Way to go, Bob. Well,
nice going.
Way to go, Bob.
It's a 5-minute question answered in one word.
It was way below 5 minutes.
Bob's on the payroll, so he's real comfortable with being able to ask.
Tell us about what time sucked, Troy.
No, I mean, hey, when I got to Dallas, they were the worst team in the league, and then after my first year, we were still the worst team in the league, and so. I didn't join a team that was 10-6, 12-4, and so there were some growing pains that came with that, and we started to turn it around. Then when we brought in Jay after my first year, and Arizona puts him on the Plan B list, and we gobble him up, and then we're able to slowly build our team. A lot of it obviously had to do with the trade of Herschel. Not so much the picks, but what we did with the picks, and so to be the worst team in football in '89, and then 3 years from that to be on top of the mountain was a great accomplishment, and I felt that we would win a Super Bowl. I didn't know that it would happen when it did as quickly, and then to hold it together. But like Jay said, when Jimmy left. First of all, I mean, I could talk about Jimmy for a while as far as what he meant to us as a coach, but he had every bit to do with the building of that roster. I mean, he made those picks. I don't know, who's saying what or what you're reading, but Jimmy made those picks, okay? And he built that team. So when he left, like Jay said, we were not on autopilot, but we continued to roll because of the things that Jimmy had implemented, within our football team. But that slowly was beginning to erode. I mean, we'd lose players. We didn't replace them through the draft. We just replaced them because they were backups, but they were already on the roster, because of the guys that Jimmy had brought in. So we went through a stretch where we were not paying as much attention to detail as we once were, and we weren't bringing in the players that we once were. So it was a steady decline, and then we went. So in '95 in '96 in '93 some would say that was the best team we had, right? And maybe it was. I don't know where I'm at on that. The '92 team was awfully good, but those 2 years were really good. '94 we weren't as good as we were in '93. '95 when we won the Super Bowl we weren't as good as we were in '94. '96 we weren't as good as we were in '95. You see where I'm going here. So every year we were getting a little worse. It bottomed out in '97. We were 6-10, and then a change was made, but we still weren't. So for me, it's a great time to talk about it because if you look at the Patriots and Brady and Bill Belichick, well, I've always posed the question: does Belichick benefit more from Tom Brady, or does Tom Brady benefit more from Bill Belichick? And I've got thoughts. I think they both benefit a lot from each other. But basically what Brady's benefiting from is what I was benefiting from and would have continued to benefit from had Jimmy have not wanted to go fishing in the Florida Keys. If he just wanted to be a lifer, as a coach, and assuming that Jerry was going to be okay with it. I will also say that Bob Kraft, he's had his moments where he's dealt with some tough moments with Bill Belichick. But he has told me that he looks back on what happened with us, and he said, why would I want to mess up a good thing? He learned from that.
Yeah.
And I really believe that if Jerry were to hit this right now, I think somehow, some way, they would, they'd move, mountains to make sure that, hey, you just don't have this happen very often. The North Turners and those guys, they say they've coached a long time in this league. They've never come into a situation that was as good as what we had during that run. So the frustration for me, as good as it was during that stretch of 5-6 years, it was every bit as bad on the back end. So my career started off bad. It went great, and then it ended bad. And it was all self-inflicted. It wasn't just because, it wasn't an organization that really was doing all the right things and we just couldn't get it done, which happens. It was an organization that didn't know how to do it. And that was the frustrating thing for me.
Does it weird you out, either one of you guys, seeing Tom Brady play at this level, at this age? I mean, you guys both checked out because of injuries, and to see a guy playing at this level at that age, and who knows when he's going to stop. Is that just weird to see? It's weird for a fan's perspective.
It's so doggone normal right now to see him out there. It's, unbelievable individual, unbelievable player, arguably one of the best quarterbacks that's ever going to play the game. And, but what he has is something so special, and to be able to not get hit like Troy got hit. The rules have changed, and it's made it easier for especially those quarterbacks and all players, even though it seems like they're getting hurt more than when we played. But it's easier for them to continue being very good and playing at a high level. He has a very unique opportunity with Belichick to make those adjustments every year when they get new players in. That's what's amazing about that team, is it doesn't matter who's coming in to play for them. They're going to be very good, and I think it has to do with those two guys.
40 is going to be the norm for quarterbacks, and it will slowly, I think, creep up a little bit more for wide receivers, because they're not getting hit quite the same way. But for quarterbacks, I saw a game. I was watching film, getting ready for a game, and Kirk Cousins had the ball. He was kind of rolling out to his left, and there was a free rusher. No one was on him, and he didn't do anything. Was not bothered by it. Didn't try to make a move, didn't throw it real quick, and he just knew he wasn't going to get hit. And so that certainly has helped. The other part that's helped for guys like Brady, Breeze, and whoever else, but these guys they come into the league now immediately taking good care of themselves. I mean, they're making so much money. They've got a whole staff. I mean, they're CEOs of this brand of theirs, and they have trainers, they have cooks, they have guys who travel with them. Brady has guys who travel with them and stretch them and all that. So they're way ahead of the curve in wellness and fitness and nutrition. That's given them a chance to play longer as well.
Back to Jimmy leaving, because fans have thought this for sure. I want to know what you think. If it was if he stayed seriously,
I'm having a hard time with this look right here
all week. If he stayed for 15 years, if he stayed for 10 years, what you've thought about it?
Well, I'm asked a lot. I am asked how many more Super Bowls would you have won if he had stayed, and who knows? I mean, who really knows? What I believe is maybe we wouldn't have won any more. I mean, I believe that we would have, but maybe we wouldn't have. But the difference would have been that we would have been. I don't want to hold us to the Patriots, because what they've done is remarkable, but we would have been like the Patriots, to where we would have been knocking at the door each year. I mean, we'd be in the playoffs. We'd be going to championship games. We would have been more competitive for a much longer period of time. And I think Jimmy's comment, I know when Jerry said, hey, any one of 500 coaches could have won a Super Bowl. And, another coach besides Jimmy could have won a Super Bowl. I mean, Barry won a Super Bowl for us 2 years later. But what Jimmy says his accomplishment was, and I think this is him, being very honest, his accomplishment wasn't coaching those Super Bowls. His most proud thing of all that was that he assembled those teams that won the Super Bowl, and I think that was his greatest strength. He was a tremendous personnel guy.
Did the egos in the room get large in any way that you thought it would have affected it? I mean, when Jimmy left, did it just kind of go wild in the locker room? Because on the outside looking in, it looked like it was just every man for himself.
Egos,
not the Eagles. No, we know they weren't in the locker room.
They had rich coach on.
Yeah, egos.
We had Michael Irvin on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
What bigger ego do you want?
But did that spread? I mean, everyone else kind of doing their own thing. Did Jimmy have that under control? Did it kind of go crazy when he left?
Nah, I think they're all pretty crazy when he was there, personally.
What changed was, Jimmy was pretty strict on who was allowed into the facility, who had access to players. Jimmy left, and we had tailors and suit salesmen that were in there fitting guys. We had barbers in there doing haircuts, and it got a lot looser. That's pretty safe to say.
Yeah, that was the impression of that second chapter I talked about. Was it felt at times, listening to you talk, that you kind of felt like you had to play quarterback and kind of be the adult in the room a lot of times for the organization. And in some ways,
I thought we were going to come out here and have a good time. Way to go, Bob! Way to go, Bob!
Here, are we?
I did my football life or whatever, and I sat down, and they wanted to get into all these questions, and very similar, and that is why I'm here. I understand that, but I came out of that interview and I just said, it was really a dark period for me in my life, and athletic or professionally, to where it was not a good time. I walked into the facility on many days saying today's going to be better, and then something would happen and I'd be right back where I was the day before, and so I've kind of gotten through that. I've let it go for the most part.
I'm sorry, I should let it go too.
It's fine.
Way to go, Bob.
But it was an organization without any direction for quite some time, and then I think that it took. I know it took Bill Parcells coming in, and for those that think, well, Bill didn't do much. I mean, they didn't even win a playoff game. The team was 5-11 for 3 years in a row prior to Bill Parcells. His first year, he takes them to the playoffs, and they've been competitive ever since Bill walked out the door. And I credit him for making the Cowboys relevant again.
Let me lighten the mood.
Oh, good.
To the clown.
That's what clowns do.
I'm going to take my clothes off. This is for both of you guys, because we're fascinated by your musical career.
That really,
especially Jay was on that.
Was that Jay's?
You want to go back to the team?
You want to go back to? Let's go back to the dark days. Changaley or something, or you want to talk about driving down 66? You pick.
I think my problem is they didn't pick the right song for me.
How did that transpire? How did that start?
I think Jerry brought in Prince Bandar, and he wanted to do an album with the guys.
Just throwing money at him.
There was a guy you guys might have been familiar with him, since I know there's musicians here on the stage. His name was Doc Swicegood.
Oh yeah,
yes.
And God rest his soul. It's a tragic ending to his life, but way
to go.
Now I'll be
once
the downer.
again.
Yeah, geez, I have fun here.
But Joe Abizzano loved.
Joe
to
got
sing.
you going on that, right?
Well, he Joe wanted. Joe was a worse singer than I am. I mean,
what are you talking about?
He would get
he
up.
Loved music, though.
He loved music,
it.
and he was great. He was great. We had more fun with Joe, and he would go and record with Swicegood. He just loved doing it, and just something he really had a passion about. And then somehow, I think it was Swicegood that said, "Hey, why don't we do this album?" And asked us and Jay and me and Randy White and Walt Garrison and some others, and we said okay. And
We're
You know,
stupid.
Yeah, where they fooled me or Swicegood did.
He said we were good.
That's right. And he wasn't even a good salesman. And he says, I mean, I do it. And he goes, man, I said, this is terrible. And he goes, no. I says, trust me. He says, you got some real talent. I mean, you got some talent. And I kind of bought into it. And he wrote the song, the Driving Down 66. He wrote that song for me. And you can tell they mixed the hell out of that song, trying to make it sound halfway decent, but it's good. It's good. I'm not embarrassed by it. It was it was something we did. It was fun. I said, what the hell, I was a professional quarterback, and I wish I could sing better. I wish I could do like Gordon and George and get up and sing and. Mike,
Tom Waits this tomorrow. You can perform it.
Well, I like my stepson is a singer, and he takes lessons 3 nights a week and can play the guitar, and he's singing. He's doing some really great things, doing shows.
Wow.
And whether or not he ultimately can ever make a living doing it, I don't know. But if I could do what he can do, to where you can just get up and sing and just have fun as a hobby and like you guys do for the most part, I'd love that. I would absolutely love that, but. It's not in the cards for me. I later did one with Waylon Jennings, and it was a little better, not a whole lot better, but I'm thrilled that I got to actually sit and do a recording with Waylon Jennings, and then I got to do one with Toby Keith. And so those are just kind of moments that Jay and I and others get a chance, because of our connection with the Cowboys and where we were at that point in our lives, where you say, hey, why not? Just have some fun with it and do it. No one's asking me now to do it.
I just did. Tom Waits was tomorrow.
If I hadn't done it then, I never would have gotten to do it.
Did your country
you did that with Toby and Waylon, huh?
I did one with Toby and then did one with Waylon.
You're not as smart as I thought.
You had a country music star girlfriend for a while. Did she ever listen to it and give you a little?
No.
Why are you booing that? Why would that be booed?
Because you're such a clown.
This side
Why
of
is
the
that
round.
being booed?
This side of the round table is tough.
All right. I thought we were doing really well. Then Dan blew it.
Why would that be booed?
How are you going to do well with a Packers fan and a clown? How are you going to do well with that? All right. Can we talk post-football next in the few minutes we have left? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do that next with Troy Aikman and Jay Novacek. Ticketstock 25.
This is
7:20 here on Sports Radio 1310 The Ticket, live from Texas Motor Speedway, Ticketstock 25. And this is our final portion of the roundtable. Troy Aikman, Jay Novacek joining us up here, and we're listening to
Hey, yes.
Troy Aikman.
Turn it up.
Yeah. Woo! Woo!
You know the words?
nothing wrong with this,
It's
man.
not a bad chorus.
No, nothing wrong with this.
A good singer could make that thing
Oh, yeah.
some money. Why don't somebody cut it tomorrow night?
We thought about
The
it.
time waste.
We thought about it. All right, so you guys, first off, you clearly, Jay, are still active in the horse industry, right? You're like riding and doing all.
Active in the horse industry.
I don't know what that means.
The horse industry.
You ride, right?
I do ride horses.
How do you still do that with like a really bad back and all that? Did it eventually get better? Did you have surgery or something?
It could be worse, could be better.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it doesn't bother you?
Could be worse, could be better.
Way to go, Corby.
Move on, Corby.
What?
That means move on.
He's trying to say.
Cutting horses? What kind of horses you work with?
I ride cutting horses.
Mm-hmm.
My wife rides, does all the English and the Western pleasure and stuff like that.
Jay, on your ranch, how
Right.
many other living things besides you and Amy are there now?
Oh, a couple thousand.
Cattle?
We have some cattle. We have we raise labradoodles, so we got a bunch of them pups on the ground. 18 of them actually, and we got obviously the horses. We got other dogs, and we got a pig.
Oh,
A pig?
So you have a pig.
And there's another exotic animal there.
And we got a camel.
My pig.
You
got
have a camel?
A camel. So here, I build my nice cutting pen, all right? It's nice outdoor, and you put nice sand in it and everything. And we go to a horse show, I think, up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and went right through Henrietta, Oklahoma, going up there.
There you go.
Route 66. Brought back some memories of a song or something. And
Guys are good back there.
Oh, you don't know
And
how
my
good they
wife, she snookers me, okay? She gets this camel when we're gone, and we don't have a place to put it, so she's thinking, okay, sand, camel, desert type, and so she puts it in my cutting pen with the nice sand. I haven't even ridden in it yet. I just finally got it built, just like I want it. And I can't use the thing for a month because there's a camel in it.
and the things that a camel leaves in it.
Oh, yeah. There's
the leavings of a large camel. Yeah, just camel
it's a little bit bigger than a rabbit, if you know what I mean.
Wait, what's the point of getting a camel? Does it keep mountain lions away or something? Like what purpose is there in a?
Nothing.
You milk a camel?
You can pretty much milk anything, Gordon.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. Did you just get a good deal on the camel, or did Prince Bandar come by and drop off the camel?
Yeah.
Like a helicopter. Just
the Prince Bandar again.
You know when they say you get something for free, it's really not free?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's our camel.
Let's get back to your pig here for a second. Did you consider your pig smart?
Pigs are really smart, yes.
They are, Mike.
Yeah, they are.
Way to go, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike's fascinated by pigs. He gets excited when people talk about pigs.
Follow-ups to that, Mike?
No follow-ups.
Not really. No.
Are you interested in getting a smart pig?
No, I prefer to... Well, I won't
Stay out of the pig business. Come on, Mike.
No.
All right, Troy. So
it must be pretty smart because it lives at our house and gets everything it wants to do. So.
you now my kids, they know you as Troy the broadcaster. They don't know you as Troy the football player.
You talking to Jay?
It's still Troy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But you look back. You've been doing it long enough to where it's your obvious gig and you're very good at it and everything. But at the time when you were a player, nobody ever expected you to do that. Especially like the last 5 years that Bob is so fond of talking about, where you were kind of a curmudgeon. You're always mad and stomping around, and you were short with the media and everything. And so, at what point did you make that? What was the matriculating point of you moving into that?
Yeah, I never had any interest in going into broadcast. It never entered my mind. I didn't think it would be anything that I would enjoy. And then they had the European League, the U.S.
NFL Europe.
NFL Europe.
Yeah.
So I had been asked several times to go over and do some games by Fox, and I just didn't have any interest. So I turned them down. And then Dale Hellestray had gone over a few times. He really enjoyed it. We were on a flight coming back from a game around 98, and I always sat next to Dale going on these trips, and Brad Champ came up, and they were talking about NFL Europe and going over and doing games. I said, Brad, why don't you go over and do some games? He goes, well, I'd like to, but, because he was talking about television and things, but he says, I haven't been able to get him to bring me over. And I said, heck, they've been asking me for a few years to go over. I said, how about if I go, and I'll tell them that I'll go, but only if you're my play-by-play guy. And he said, man, that'd be awesome. So I contacted Fox, said, you guys have been asking me for the last several years, and I'd like to go. I wasn't going because I wanted to go over and broadcast. I was going because I just thought, they're going to put me up for 2 weeks. I'm going to enjoy Europe, and I'll do a couple games, and this will be great. Brad will get to do the games he wants to do. But then I got over there, and so we went to the practices, and I started asking Brad, okay, not that a lot of people were watching the games, but I wanted to be prepared and not embarrass myself. So I said, what do I need to know? And he started telling me, and so he and the comfort for me was the reason I didn't think I would I just didn't know how you could talk for 3 hours, without getting feedback, right?
Try 4.5.
Yeah. So
special kind of hell.
So I was just kind of saying, hey, how am I going to do this? And then but I knew that if I didn't say anything, I knew Brad could carry the entire broadcast because he was a pro, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't feel any pressure to have to talk if I didn't feel like talking. But then when you start preparing for a game and you start working at it, then you realize, man, I got a lot of things that I want to say. And it was so conversational with Brad. I loved it. Really enjoyed it. And then when that game ended, I got a call from Ed Gorin, who was the head of Fox at the time, and he said, hey, when you retire, he says, we've got a job for you. And now he didn't say it on what team, but then 2 years later, when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, Millen was leaving and going to the Lions to be the general manager.
It's a good move on his part.
Well, it didn't go great, obviously, but he made a whole lot of money, and not that money's everything, but I don't think he regretted the decision. And for me, they said if you retire, we're going to move you into the number 2 booth. And I worked with Daryl Johnson that year, and I really, quite honestly, I thought I'd do 2 or 3 years, and then I'd be on to something else, but. It's a great job. The job's great. The pay's good. The amount of time I have, especially as a single father at the time, was really good. So thank you.
What was the other? I mean, you were saying you were trying to decide what you were going to do after. What was there a plan B?
Well, I didn't have a plan. I was never really worried about it towards the end of my career. I knew something would present itself, and I had mentors in business that I knew that I could go to work for them and go that route. But this provided an opportunity. I took it, and I've enjoyed it. And I've said it many times. I've said it on the show with these guys. I still believe there's another frontier for me. I don't know what that is, but
music, maybe.
I don't. Yeah. I don't think my last foray into something is going to be broadcasting.
Do you think football is you'll stick with something related to sports?
I don't know. I would probably say more than likely, but I don't know. I haven't closed doors on anything really.
Head coach of the Cowboys
is inside or
no? I would the coaching part. I think that when I first retired, that if my kids weren't if I didn't have kids or if they were older, I might have immediately gone into either coaching or pursued a front office role. But my girls were just born the year I retired. My girls weren't born my last year; they were born my first year out of retirement, and I just felt that it was a really selfish move to go into coaching. The coaches they don't see their families at all during the football season, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be home for them, and so that was never an option for me.
Is the end of broadcasting inside for you, or is it open-ended, or?
No, it's not. I've got 4 years left on this contract. I just signed a new contract last year, and I want to do that. And what I'd like to do is get my kids through college. My youngest is a freshman, and then once that happens, then I'll decide, do I want to continue to do it or not do it. I think I'll enjoy broadcasting even more when the kids are out of the house because I won't be rushing back to Dallas. I'll be able to stay out and travel to some cities, go from one city to the next city, and not necessarily have to come back to Dallas all the time as quickly as possible. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I think what I'd like is probably 8-10 more years, and then I'll be in my early 60s, and I think that would probably be about it. I just don't want to be. I don't want to be a whole lot older than that in the public and on television. And I think that when I do retire from that, I'm not sure I'll be seen from or heard from again. I don't know that I'm going to be attending events or commenting on. I think I just really want to kind of get away and go do my thing, whatever that is, and just be as far away from people as I possibly can.
When you were a player, what did you think of the ticket?
I didn't like it.
I
didn't like it.
I'll stop you right now because I was 24 years old, and they would send me out there to get tape and all that, and I would walk around, and of course we had to have those stupid giant mic flags at all times, which eventually took off. But I remember walking up to you one time, and this is after Skip being the biggest jackwagon there is, and the stupid-ass comments that he made.
Sorry about him.
But and so I remember walking up to you one time. I'm like, "Hey, man, blah 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 blah," and you looked at me and you looked down at the mic flag, and you're like, "Get out of here!" And I was like, "Yeah, it's freaking Skip Bayless. He sucks." And this guy, he's still sucking, and he's making $8 million a year doing nothing.
Sucking.
Yeah.
Yeah, sucking.
Sucking it in.
And that really is. I mean, that was, the station started, before he then wrote his book and all that. But he was an adversary from the time I walked through the doors in '89, and it had very little to do with me. I don't think it had anything to do with me, quite honestly. I think it had more to do with the antagonistic relationship that he had with Randy Galloway and Dale Hansen. So, when I came to town, Hanson and Galloway were strong supporters from the very beginning of me. And so then he had to take on the contrarian view. And so, I just thought that I'm fine if I don't play well and somebody writes that. I just, when it goes beyond that and you're just constantly, which is what he's been doing with LeBron James. I mean, give me a break. Yeah. And so I didn't care for him really pretty early on. And then when he went to the station, it was just one of those deals where, I won't do a program right now on FS1. He works for Fox, and he's on FS1, and I've made it clear to my bosses that any show that's on FS1, I just simply won't be on. And they said, well, what do you mean? How can you do that? And I said, well, it's real easy. I'm doing it. And, so when you hired Skip, did you think that I'm now hoping this network, succeeds and has great success? I mean, give me a break. So they fortunately haven't fired me over it, but I don't do shows on FS1.
So your ticket hatred all stemmed from there. You didn't care about
no, and I will say, no, I don't. I think it's all great. I mean, I really do. But then when I would occasionally tune in, and I was one of these because I think that I read it in The Athletic today when I was reading your story that when I would tune in, I'm expecting to be listening to sports. And I'm listening, and it just seemed like every time I tuned in, it was talking about just nonsense, and I'm like, this stuff is awful. I didn't hang in there long enough to really appreciate any of it, and I was just like, these guys are a bunch of idiots, and so it never changed. And then they approached me about doing a show. And I'd been out, Craig, you said 15 years or whatever it was. I knew it was shortly after I'd retired. And when I did retire, I started listening to the show. And I found myself to be, now that's all I listen to. When I get in the car, it's on, And so,
that makes them happy.
It's an easy audience.
So you were one of them, man.
But now I really do enjoy the takes on the games. I mean, I enjoy when you guys are talking about sports and the games, but I find myself more, listening to Gordo's Corner and laughing about some of that stuff and laughing about I've gone full circle, and I really do get it, and I never once think, gosh, why are they not covering sports, or why are they talking about this? I think it's awesome, and I know that other stations around the country have tried to duplicate it, and I was telling Dan Bennett backstage, you can't. I mean, you can't pull it, that, because you guys here are the ones who make it work, and it's really cool. I've told Joe, now with the app, I've told Joe and guys on our crew, I said, you've got to download the app. And I'm telling you, at 8:40, I live for 8:40. At 8:40, it's the greatest stuff ever. And so I think it's awesome. I have told, when Drew Bledsoe came to town, I said, Drew, I really think the best thing you can do is somehow figure out how to have a weekly show on the ticket, because the listening base is so broad, and they really, if you have a relationship with the ticket and you're able to talk about whatever it is, the good times, the tough games, whatever it is, I'm telling you, it'll serve you well in the long haul if you're in our community. And I don't think he took me up on it. That didn't happen. But I would tell Dak the same thing. I think this station has so much reach and impacts so many people that I think that these players, if given an opportunity, I think they should have a show on the ticket.
Boy, thank you for 2 years worth of promos.
Yeah. The great Troy Aikman and Jay Novacek. Everybody.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back in a little bit.